guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you a comparison video today between the Nike Mercurial Superfly 5 and the Nike Mercurial Vapor 11, the two top-end models in the current Mercurial lineup. The Superfly 5 has a retail price of $300 US, and the Vapor 11 retails for $230 US. They're both top-end shoes. They're both very, very good performers. And in today's video, we're going to be comparing the two in pretty much every single category that you can, letting you know what the major differences are and hopefully allowing you to make the right decision if you are trying to pick between these two shoes. So if you're interested in learning the differences, stick around, watch the entire video. And with that being said, let's get right into it. To start things off, let me answer the one question that I know a lot of people will ask down below in the comment section of this video, and that is, what is better, the Superfly 5 or the Vapor 11? The simple answer to that question is neither one of these shoes is better than the other. It really is a matter of what your personal preferences are and what you're looking for from the latest and greatest top-end Mercurial. If you prefer the mid-cut design, the feel of flying it, and just the way this shoe fits in general, then maybe the Superfly 5 is the better option. Whereas if you prefer something that has a thinner upper with the one-piece Teijin synthetic, the low cut, and just a more traditional Mercurial experience in general, then maybe you're going to prefer the Vapor 11. Again, they're both top-end models. They're both equally as good performance-wise. It's just a difference when it comes to fit and feel due to the differences in the upper, of course. So which one's better? Neither one is better. It just depends on what you're looking for. Next, let's talk about the uppers, which for me is the biggest difference between the Superfly 5 and the Vapor 11. With the Superfly, you're getting a Flyknit construction for the entire upper, Flywire cables running through the midfoot within the lacing system, acting as your main support system for the actual upper. You have a Nike skin top layer to protect the upper, as well as add a little bit of additional grip on the ball. You have the 3D speed rib texturing, where the actual thickness of the upper varies between 2.5 and 1 millimeter within the actual stripes of the Flyknit that you can very clearly see, whether it's black and orange or black and pink. And then of course you have ACC all conditions control, as well as the mid-cut aspect of the shoe. That doesn't really impact the overall feel, but we will touch on it a little bit later in the video. With the Vapor 11, you're getting the speed rib texturing, you're getting the ACC all conditions control, you're getting a somewhat similar one-piece design, although obviously it isn't made from Flyknit. Instead, it's made from Teijin synthetic, which in comparison to the Flyknit on the Superfly 5 is thinner overall, even though it does have the same texturing. This is, like I mentioned earlier, more of a traditional Mercurial experience in that it's a super thin synthetic material that is surprisingly soft and flexible with no flywire. Instead, it's reinforced by an internal synthetic leather layer that's also very, very thin. Now, the main thing you're going to notice when it comes to touch on the ball between these two shoes is that the upper on the Superfly 5, being a Flyknit material, does feel thicker in general, and that's just the nature of the material itself. Because it is a knitted upper, it does have more of a softness, almost like a padded quality to it. It's still very, very thin, but in comparison to something like the Vapor 11, this shoe just has a much more pingy sensation. There's less padding to the upper, almost no padding whatsoever. They added some thickness coming from the Vapor 10, but overall, if you're looking for the closest to barefoot feel out of these two shoes, the Vapor 11 is the way to go. Whereas, like I said, the Superfly 5, it's still part of the Mercurial line. It's still very thin. It definitely does offer what I would consider to be a barefoot feel, but there is, like I said, that slight padded sensation due to the speed rib texturing, which does add thickness to the upper, and the knitted material that the upper is made out of in the first place. Overall, though, they're both very, very good shoes. The upper, because it is Flyknit, does feel slightly more sock-like, a little bit more flexible, again, just because it is a knitted material. Whereas the Vapor 11, it's a thin synthetic, but still doesn't have any kind of firmness to it. It's surprisingly flexible, it moves naturally with your foot, and it does fit a little bit tighter as well. So in terms of giving you that more one-to-one sensation, while both of these shoes fit extremely well and very, very close to your foot, the Vapor 11 does feel like it fits your foot that much more closely in comparison to the Superfly 5. So just to sum up what the major difference is, if you want something that does have more of a kind of sock-like sensation on your foot in terms of fitting very snug, still being very thin, but having kind of a soft, flexible almost slightly cushioned quality to it, then maybe the Superfly 5 will be your preference, whereas with the Vapor 11, it's a thinner material. The synthetic material really doesn't offer any padding at all, so the touch and overall feel is a lot more pingy on the ball. And again, it's kind of more of a traditional Mercurial experience, whereas the Superfly 5 feels like a more unique experience overall that's kind of hard to compare to anything else out there, aside from maybe the previous Superfly 4. So both very good shoes when it comes to touch and the general fit that they offer on foot. But again, it really depends on what you're looking for as to which one is going to be the better option for yourself. Next, let's talk about the fact that the Superfly 5 is a mid-cut shoe and the Vapor 11 is a low-cut shoe. Now, a lot of people are really excited and super enthusiastic about the whole mid-cut concept from Nike and just mid-cut soccer shoes in general right now, but there really isn't any performance advantage to having a mid-cut shoe. It's something that looks a little bit different and fits a little bit different, but that's about the only difference. I do have a video on my channel where I talk in detail about the difference between mid-cut and low-cut shoes, so if you want to check that out, there'll be a little pop-up on screen where you can go ahead and watch that video if you haven't seen it already. But just to very quickly sum up the difference between a mid-cut and a low-cut shoe when you're talking about the Vapor 11 and the Superfly 5. The Vapor 11, it's low-cut just like every single Mercurial Vapor prior to it. It's very familiar in terms of how it fits in the heel. It does have an internal heel counter, synthetic leather liner, a decent amount of padding considering how light the shoe is, and really there's no issues, there's nothing to really get used to in the heel area. It feels like a normal low-cut soccer shoe. With the Superfly 5 being that it's mid-cut, they have actually changed it a little bit coming from the Superfly 4, or if you're comparing it to the Obra or Phantom 2, this does have a different construction at the heel area, which I would argue is a lot more comfortable. It takes a little bit less time to get used to, it's not quite as stiff, and it does feel more like a low-cut shoe from out of the box. It's still something that you kind of have to take your time with in terms of just getting used to how it fits and feels. It can cause discomfort depending on how good or bad that it does fit you, but for the most part, this is the best implementation of a mid-cut design that Nike has featured so far on a pair of soccer shoes. So again, if you like the look of the mid-cut collar or you just want the Flyknit upper in general that the Superfly 5 has, then maybe take a look at the Superfly 5. But if you just prefer something that, like I said, is more traditional Mercurial, a super thin, super light, tight-fitting shoe that does have a more traditional low-cut feel, then again, the Vapor 11 may be the better choice for you. When it comes to the sole plate and stud pattern, they are identical on the Superfly 5 and the Vapor 11. There is no difference whatsoever. Now, this is the firm ground variation that I'm showing you, which features the new Nike Plate sole plate, which is essentially a single layer of material that they're able to make using a special vacuum forming process that allows them to shed quite a bit of weight out of the construction of a standard sole plate. I know that with the Superfly 5, a lot of people complained about it not being carbon fiber, but again, if you saw my comparison between the Superfly 5 and the 4, I said in that video that while this may not look as cool as the carbon fiber sole plate on the Superfly 4, I can tell you that the performance and overall feel is a lot better. It's probably my favorite new feature of the new Mercurial models, both the Vapor 11 as well as the Superfly 5. So using this single layer vacuum forming process, it allows them to make the sole plate out of one single layer of material, which, like I said, does shave the weight, which we're going to take a look at both of the weight of these shoes a little bit later in this video. But it also allows them to implement an interesting shape to the sole plate. They are anatomically formed. So normally with the sole plate on pretty much any soccer shoe prior to this, the sole plate is completely flat and you sit directly on top of it. You stand directly on top of it, I should say, which is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that system. But because of this sole plate, it has a little bit of shape to it. It's hard to describe. You almost sit in the sole plate, if that makes any sense. It almost feels like it's kind of grasping the sides of your foot. You sink into it a little bit, and it has a little bit of shape that's super noticeable in the forefoot and toe box area, but not uncomfortable. It's something that I guess feels a little bit strange for the first 10 minutes, but you immediately get used to it. And the benefit of having the sole plate anatomically shaped as opposed to being completely flat is that it really does a good job of helping your foot stay planted on the top of that sole plate. It prevents your foot from sliding around, which it already isn't going to do very much of in either of these two shoes just because they fit so well. and have such good support systems. They're both very, very responsive. But again, the anatomically shaped sole plate only adds to that effect. It makes the shoe feel that much more responsive, and you feel that much more connected to the shoe. So the sole plate, again, not as cool as carbon fiber that we saw in the previous generation of Mercurial Superfly 4, but in my opinion, a major improvement when it comes to feel and ultimately performance. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, this new firm ground stud pattern for the Mercurial line is the best one that they've ever come out with, in my opinion. It's super aggressive. The studs are all this kind of chevron shape, the exact same length, the exact same size. They're just positioned at different angles, and it digs in, it bites as much as you could possibly want a firm ground stud pattern to do. And really, it's as good as you could possibly expect a firm ground Mercurial style stud pattern to be. It's super aggressive traction when you're pushing off in any direction, slowing down, accelerating. It does everything you could want from a stud pattern of this type. If you've worn Mercurials in the past and you like the traction that they provided, this is one step above anything they've done prior to this. So again, really good sole plate, really good stud pattern, and they're identical on both of these two shoes. So really, the sole plate or stud pattern, while they're both very good, should not be a deciding factor here. As far as weight is concerned, these are both very, very light shoes. You're not really gonna have an issue with either of them if you're looking for that lightweight feel. But for the sake of comparison, I'm gonna weigh both of them for you today in real time using this scale. Keep in mind, these are both the exact same size 9 US, so this is a very fair comparison. We'll start off with the Superfly 5, throw them on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 6.6 ounces, the equivalent of 187 grams, which is very, very lightweight in comparison to pretty much anything. So we'll change the scale back to ounces, pull these off. Remember those numbers, 6.6 ounces. We're gonna throw on the Vapor 11, and you can see that they weigh in at 6 ounces exactly, the equivalent of 171 grams. So you're talking about a shoe that weighs 0.6 ounces less in the Vapor 11 when compared to the Superfly 5. Again, they're both very, very lightweight shoes. Is 0.6 ounces a significant amount of weight? In all honesty, it isn't, but when you're considering that you're in the 6 ounce range already, which is extremely lightweight, 0.6 ounces is somewhat noticeable. In hand, you notice it a little bit. But for me, the major difference is when the shoes are on your feet. The Superfly 5 feels really lightweight, but because the upper is a little bit thicker and does have a little bit more kind of softness to it, it takes away from the responsiveness in comparison to the Vapor 11. And that's not to say that the Superfly 5 isn't responsive, but with the Vapor 11, because of its thinner upper that fits a little bit tighter, you just get a more lightweight feel in general. So again, both very lightweight shoes. If you want that lightweight feel, you're gonna get it from either of these two models. But for me, if you want the lightest possible feel, the Vapor 11 does feel lighter on feet than the Superfly 5. When it comes to fit and feel, these shoes are similar, but at the same time distinctly different from each other. They have the same sole plate, which gives them the same general underfoot sensation and also the same general shape. But when you're talking about the fit and the heel, given that one has the mid-cut design, one is low-cut, there is a difference there. Again, one's not necessarily better than the other in regards to comfort or fit. It's really more of a personal preference thing. And as far as the rest of the upper is concerned, they're both tight-fitting shoes. They have the same general shape, but just given to the more stretchy, I guess, softer nature of the Flyknit upper on the Superfly 5, it does come across as more flexible and even a little bit more generous in terms of width overall, where the Vapor 11 does feel much thinner, much firmer on your foot, and it just has a tighter sensation when you pull the laces tight. But again, if you like that tight fitting style of shoe, you're gonna have a very comfortable and a very good fit in general from either of these two shoes. It's just that the Vapor 11 fits a little bit tighter, it's thinner, and like I said, it does have a firmer sensation on feet, whereas the Superfly 5 has a little bit more thickness to it. It's a little bit softer, a little bit more flexible on your foot, and it's just a different feel in general. It depends on what you're looking for. Width-wise, neither of these shoes are particularly wide. If you have really wide feet, the Mercurial line has probably never been your thing, and these are no different. If you like that tighter fit though, and you've worn Mercurials in the past, you're probably gonna like how these fit. They both fit extremely well with pretty much no extra space on the inside. It's a tight fit all the way through. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US in both of these two shoes, and the fit and length is absolutely perfect. So just like pretty much every other Mercurial model, whether you're going for the Vapor 11 or the Superfly 5, both of these shoes run true to size, and that's what I would recommend doing if you are looking for the best possible fit. Alright guys, that is it for my comparison between the Superfly 5 and the Vapor 11. If you're a fan of the Mercurial line, there's a lot to like about both of these two shoes, and I will say that these are both improvements over the models that they replace as well. So if you're coming from a Vapor 10 or a Superfly 4, these are both very, very solid options, and like I said, better than the shoes that they replace. As far as which of these two is my personal favorite, because I know a lot of you guys will ask, I really like the low cut aspect of the Vapor 11. That is my preference if it is between a low cut and a mid cut shoe, but I do prefer the Flyknit upper on the Superfly 5. So for that reason, I will say that my favorite of these two models is the Superfly. But again, you absolutely cannot go wrong with either of these two shoes. It really just depends on what type of fit and general feel that you're looking for, because like I said, they're both top end performers. So that's pretty much it for my comparison, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to support the video with a like. If you have any questions at all regarding either of these two shoes, leave them down below in the comments and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you're looking for more info as well as where to buy either of these two models, there will be links to the review pages on my website for both shoes in the description of this video. If you aren't subscribed already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.